She was a volcano of ideas. We hope to excavate, to know more about her plans, about herself, her dynasty.
For centuries, Queen Hatshepsut's legacy lay buried beneath the sands of Egypt, her tomb lost, her name erased, her story silenced. But when scientists finally uncovered her remains and AI began decoding her secrets, the line between history and horror began to blur. What they discovered didn't just rewrite her fate, it awakened something unsettling. The Forgotten Pharaoh. Over 3,000 years ago, Egypt was ruled by one of history's most remarkable figures, Queen Hatshepsut. She was not just another monarch in a long line of pharaohs. She was a woman who rose to power in a man's world and redefined what it meant to rule ancient Egypt. Born around 1505 BC, to Pharaoh Thutmose I and his great royal wife, Ahmose, Hatshepsut was destined for prominence. When her half-brother and husband, Thutmose II, died unexpectedly, the throne passed to his infant son, Thutmose III. As the young boy's stepmother, Hatshepsut was appointed regent, but her ambition and intelligence soon elevated her far beyond that role. Within a few years, she took the unprecedented step of declaring herself pharaoh, becoming co-ruler alongside the child king. This was no small act of defiance. Ancient Egypt was a deeply patriarchal society, and kingship was seen as a divine male role. To secure her legitimacy, Hatshepsut adopted the full regalia of a male pharaoh, wearing the false beard, traditional headdress, and even being depicted with a masculine physique in temple carvings. Yet her message was clear. She embodied both the strength of a father and the nurturing wisdom of a mother to her people. Under Hatshepsut's rule, Egypt entered a period of peace, prosperity, and artistic brilliance. She revived trade networks that had collapsed under previous rulers, launching expeditions to faraway lands such as Punt, a journey that brought back treasures like gold, incense, and exotic animals. Economically and culturally, her reign marked one of the most stable and prosperous eras in the New Kingdom. She was also one of Egypt's greatest builders. Her architectural legacy includes grand temples, obelisks, and monuments that still inspire awe today. Most iconic of all is her mortuary temple at Deir el-Bahari, a masterpiece of symmetry and harmony carved into the cliffs of western Thebes. These constructions were not merely symbols of wealth and power, they were statements of divine authority and visionary leadership. But Hatshepsut's triumph came at a cost. After her death, her successor, Thutmose III, initiated a campaign to erase her from history. Her statues were shattered, her name was chiseled off monuments, and her image was defaced across temples. For centuries, she nearly vanished from Egypt's royal narrative, her achievements credited to male rulers. It wasn't until modern archaeology rediscovered her temples and inscriptions that Hatshepsut's legacy was restored, revealing a ruler who defied convention, mastered diplomacy, and proved that power could transcend gender. Her story remains one of history's greatest tales of ambition, resilience, and rediscovery. But centuries later, one forgotten tomb and a mysterious mummy would reopen the case that ancient kings tried to close forever. The mummy without a name. For hundreds of years, the Valley of the Kings whispered the same riddle. Where was the missing queen of Egypt's golden age? Archaeologists had uncovered countless treasures from royal tombs, yet one figure remained stubbornly elusive. The powerful female pharaoh, Hatshepsut, had vanished from history, and her resting place seemed forever lost beneath layers of time and stone. In the early 20th century, as Egyptology blossomed into a global obsession, teams of explorers combed through the West Bank of Thebes, mapping and excavating tomb after tomb. The valley was alive with discovery, golden sarcophagi, intricately painted walls, and long-lost dynasties re-emerging from the sand. Yet amid this excitement, something felt incomplete. The reign of Hatshepsut, a ruler whose monuments rivaled any king's, had left behind magnificent temples and inscriptions, but her body was nowhere to be found. Many royal mummies had suffered similar fates. Centuries of tomb robbery, political upheaval, and hasty reburials had jumbled Egypt's royal dead. Some pharaohs were stripped of their ornaments. Others were moved to secret caches by priests, desperate to protect them from looters. Among the reburied and mislabeled remains were several unidentified women, anonymous figures whose wrappings and ornaments hinted at high status, but lacked the inscriptions that once gave them names. One of those forgotten figures lay in a small, overlooked tomb, cataloged as KV60. Compared to the grandeur of Tutankhamun's resting place or the colossal halls of Ramses II, KV-60 seemed almost insignificant. It was dusty, unevenly cut, and poorly preserved. Inside, archaeologists found two female mummies, one inside a coffin bearing the name of Hatshepsut's nurse, and another lying exposed on the floor, uncoffined, unnamed, and ignored. At first, this second mummy attracted little attention. Scholars assumed she was an attendant, perhaps hastily placed there during a chaotic burial period. But something about the details didn't fit. Her left arm was bent across her chest, a pose associated with royalty, and her linen wrappings, though decayed, showed signs of care. Even so, in an era without modern forensic tools, such observations were dismissed as speculation. The mummy was resealed within the tomb, unstudied and forgotten for decades. Meanwhile, the search for Hatshepsut's remains became a century-long obsession. Theories abounded. Perhaps her successor, Thutmose III, had ordered her body destroyed. Perhaps loyal priests had hidden her to protect her from desecration. Each discovery, a canopic box bearing her name, fragments of her temple, reignited hope, only to leave scholars with more questions than answers. Decades later, a new generation of Egyptologists returned to KV-60. Advances in scanning and DNA testing had transformed archaeology, and what once seemed a dead end now held promise. When the team reopened the tomb, they took a closer look at the neglected mummy on the floor, the one no one had thought important. Her body, her wrappings, and her burial clues all whispered of a forgotten grandeur. Though her name was still lost, experts began to suspect the impossible, that this unmarked woman might be Egypt's missing queen, the mummy without a name. For decades, scientists thought the trail had gone cold until a single missing tooth began to change everything. The tooth that changed history. Sometimes history turns on the smallest clue imaginable, in this case, a single tooth. For decades, Egyptologists had searched for proof of Hatshepsut's remains, sifting through fragments of temples, tombs, and forgotten archives. But the answer to Egypt's most enduring mystery wasn't hidden in gold or stone. It was resting quietly inside a wooden box, mislabeled and overlooked in a museum storeroom. In 2007, Egyptian archaeologist Dr. Zahi Hawass and his team reopened the case of the unidentified mummy found in KV-60, the one long dismissed as a minor court woman. While reviewing artifacts connected to Hatshepsut, researchers stumbled upon a small canopic box inscribed with her royal name. Inside lay a molar tooth, believed to have been taken from her body during mummification. It seemed like an insignificant discovery until someone noticed that the tooth's shape and wear pattern matched the gap in the jaw of the mysterious KV-60 mummy almost perfectly. To test the theory, the team used advanced imaging and forensic analysis. The alignment, root size, and dental decay all pointed toward a biological match. This was not a coincidence. This was identification. The mummy without a name finally had one, Pharaoh Hatshepsut. For Egyptologists, it was a moment of triumph, decades in the making. The discovery tied together two distant sites, the grandeur of her mortuary temple at Deir el-Bahari and the humble tomb KV-60, rewriting what was known about her burial and legacy. Yet, while the tooth provided a breakthrough, the science behind confirming her identity wasn't straightforward. Ancient DNA, especially from Egyptian mummies, is notoriously difficult to analyze. Over millennia, heat, humidity, and microbial decay had degraded the genetic material to near dust. Early DNA tests on royal mummies often produced inconclusive or contaminated results, leaving researchers cautious. It took years of refined techniques, from mitochondrial DNA sequencing to isotope analysis, to support what the tooth had already suggested. Even with this confirmation, the revelation led to unsettling new questions. Why was Egypt's greatest female ruler buried in such an unassuming tomb, without royal inscriptions or protection? And how had her remains ended up separated from her royal artifacts? Some scholars believe her successor, Thutmose III, deliberately relocated her to obscure her memory, while others argue that priests hid her body during periods of tomb robbing. The tooth that matched across centuries didn't just solve a mystery, it reignited one, because beneath the scientific triumph lay a darker curiosity. What else about her death and burial had been hidden or deliberately erased? But even after the identification, questions lingered, and new technology would uncover something far more disturbing: the DNA enigma. When Hatshepsut's mummy was finally identified, scientists hoped her remains would answer one final question: how did Egypt's most powerful woman die? To find out, researchers turned to one of archaeology's most fragile frontiers: ancient DNA. Extracting genetic material from a 3,000-year-old mummy is no simple task. Time, heat, and humidity destroy DNA, leaving only fragments scattered through brittle bone and desiccated tissue. In Hatshepsut's case, these fragments were faint traces of what once held the blueprint to an entire dynasty. Every step had to be performed in sterilized labs, sealed off from modern contamination. A single human hair or a dust particle from an excavator could compromise years of work. The team used advanced sequencing techniques to isolate what little DNA remained inside her teeth and femur. These samples, though damaged, offered enough genetic markers to compare with other members of the Thutmose royal line. Initial results confirmed that the KV-60 mummy was indeed related to Thutmose I, aligning perfectly with Hatshepsut's known lineage. But as deeper genomic analysis continued, the data began revealing something unexpected and unsettling. Researchers detected mutations consistent with hereditary disorders that may have affected her health. Some sequences suggested metabolic imbalances and possible signs of diabetes or bone cancer. Even more intriguing were chemical residues found within her body that hinted at prolonged exposure to toxic substances, specifically skin ointments containing carcinogenic compounds. Historical evidence notes that Hatshepsut suffered from skin conditions and regularly applied medicinal balms made from resin and oils. Ironically, the very remedies meant to heal her may have slowly poisoned her. The combination of genetic vulnerability and chronic exposure to toxins painted a haunting picture. Egypt's greatest queen may have been undone by her own medicine chest. Yet another layer of mystery lingered. The data also showed anomalies suggesting abrupt physiological stress before death, inconsistent with natural decline. Could someone have tampered with her treatments, turning them lethal? While scientists hesitated to draw conclusions, the question persisted: was this a tragic accident of ancient science, or a carefully engineered death disguised as one? Traditional forensics could go no further. The evidence was too degraded, the signs too subtle. But then, a new technology promised to reopen the investigation with unprecedented clarity. Artificial intelligence would soon scan every microscopic clue, and what it found would unsettle even the most seasoned Egyptologists. Still, one question haunted researchers: was her death natural or engineered? That's when AI entered the story. When AI opened the sarcophagus. For decades, Egyptologists believed the mystery of Hatshepsut's death had reached its limit. Forensic tools could only go so far. Her remains were fragile, her DNA degraded, and her story buried under centuries of royal intrigue. Then, artificial intelligence entered the picture, breathing digital life into clues too complex for human eyes. In 2023, a multidisciplinary team of geneticists and data scientists launched a project unlike anything attempted in Egyptology before. They trained advanced AI models to analyze ancient DNA, microscopic tissue scans, and even environmental particles from Hatshepsut's tomb. These algorithms were designed not just to identify genetic sequences, but to reconstruct the missing ones, predicting degraded code using probability-based modeling. The results were astonishing. Where human researchers had struggled to fill gaps, AI generated complete genomic maps showing previously invisible mutations and chemical signatures. It simulated how toxins could interact with her bloodstream, tracked mineral traces on her bones, and even recreated the air composition inside the KV-60 tomb at the time of burial. The data painted a vivid and disturbing picture. The algorithms identified residues of compounds that didn't belong in traditional Egyptian embalming mixtures. They were foreign substances, complex blends resembling heavy metals and plant-based toxins. AI cross-referenced these findings with historical trade records, revealing that similar poisons were imported during the late 18th dynasty, often used for medicinal or, more ominously, political purposes. Then came the most chilling revelation. The distribution pattern of the toxins matched targeted ingestion rather than accidental exposure. This wasn't a gradual poisoning from cosmetic creams. It was concentrated, deliberate, and fatal. The system even detected inconsistencies in the tomb's environmental data, suggesting her body had been moved or tampered with after her death, possibly to conceal evidence of foul play. The implications shook the archaeological world. Could Hatshepsut, Egypt's most powerful woman, have been assassinated, her death covered up by those eager to erase her reign from memory? Her successor, Thutmose III, famously defaced her monuments and removed her name from royal records. Whether his motives were political, personal, or both, AI had reopened a question scholars thought was settled. Was Egypt's greatest queen betrayed from within her own dynasty? This digital autopsy didn't just rewrite her fate, it blurred the boundary between history and technology. AI had done what centuries of human study could not: expose how ambition, secrecy, and power can survive even death itself. What the algorithms found didn't just rewrite Hatshepsut's fate, it unveiled how power, politics, and murder have always been entangled. The Curse of the Pharaohs, reimagined. When scientists confirmed the identity of Hatshepsut's mummy and AI hinted at the possibility of foul play, the excitement was electric, but what followed felt eerily familiar. For a brief moment, it seemed that one of history's greatest mysteries had finally been solved. Yet within weeks, strange stories began to circulate, whispers of accidents, illnesses, and inexplicable technical failures that seemed to follow those involved in the project. Soon, the headlines had a name for it: Hatshepsut's Curse Reawakened. It began quietly, almost insignificantly. Several members of the laboratory team working on the genetic sequencing project fell ill, developing severe respiratory infections that refused to clear up. Doctors suspected allergies or fungal spores released from ancient materials, a common hazard in mummy studies. But the pattern grew more unnerving as equipment began to malfunction without reason. State-of-the-art scanners would freeze mid-scan, data would vanish from secured servers, and electrical systems shorted out during key experiments, even when no clear cause could be found. The media seized the narrative. News outlets and social media users filled timelines with eerie speculation. Perhaps the pharaoh's spirit was disturbed, or perhaps the AI system used to analyze her DNA had invited something back from the digital void. Videos and articles racked up millions of views, painting the discovery as something both groundbreaking and dangerous. It didn't matter that scientists dismissed the notion as coincidence. The idea of a curse was far more captivating. Psychologists and cultural historians soon weighed in. They noted how easily ancient fears adapt to modern times. The so-called Curse of the Pharaohs had haunted imagination since the 1920s, when members of Howard Carter's team died mysteriously after unsealing Tutankhamun's tomb. Later research revealed mold spores, ancient bacteria, and exposure to toxic substances as plausible explanations. But the mythology endured because it appealed to something primal, the belief that disturbing the dead comes with a price. In Hatshepsut's case, that belief resurfaced with a modern twist. The unease wasn't just about tombs and mummies anymore, it was about technology. Artificial intelligence had probed deeper into the ancient world than any human could, reconstructing DNA, simulating long-lost environments, even predicting possible causes of death. And when those same algorithms hinted at deliberate poisoning and posthumous cover-ups, the line between science and the supernatural seemed to blur. Even within the research community, some admitted to feeling unsettled. The idea of AI reviving fragments of a long-dead queen, decoding her cells, reconstructing her face, and speculating about her murder felt almost like digital necromancy. When unexplained power outages struck during a live demonstration of Hatshepsut's 3D reconstruction, a few uneasy glances were exchanged, though no one dared to say what they were thinking aloud. Eventually, the practical explanations emerged. The respiratory infections were traced to mold exposure in the ancient wrappings. The data losses came from overworked servers, and the power outages from faulty grounding in the lab. But by then, the story had already taken root in the public imagination. People wanted to believe the queen had stirred again, not in body, but in influence. In a way, the entire saga brought Hatshepsut's legend full circle. Once a divine ruler erased from history, she had returned, not in stone or scripture, but as a digital ghost haunting modern science. Whether coincidence or consequence, her name once again inspired awe, fear, and fascination, reminding humanity that some mysteries, no matter how rationally explained, refuse to rest quietly beneath the sands of time. But beyond superstition and myth, a deeper truth was emerging, one that AI was only beginning to reveal about our past. AI, the new archaeologist of time. Artificial intelligence is no longer just a tool of the future. It has become the newest archaeologist of the past. From decoding long-lost languages to predicting the locations of undiscovered tombs, AI is reshaping the field of archaeology in ways that would have seemed impossible even a decade ago. What once took decades of manual excavation and guesswork can now be modeled, reconstructed, and analyzed in hours. In the case of Queen Hatshepsut, AI uncovered evidence that eluded human eyes for centuries. By processing microscopic genetic fragments and environmental data from her tomb, machine learning systems revealed patterns suggesting not only illness but potential poisoning. It was a breakthrough that stunned scientists and proved that algorithms can see beyond what human intuition allows. Across the world, similar revolutions are underway. Neural networks trained on ancient texts are helping linguists decode forgotten scripts such as Linear A and Mayan glyphs. Satellite imaging combined with AI has identified potential archaeological sites buried beneath desert sands, forests, and even urban landscapes. These discoveries are rewriting maps of ancient civilizations and offering glimpses into cultures long thought lost to time. Yet with this power comes profound ethical questions. Should we let machines interpret history, or does that risk losing the human perspective that gives it meaning? AI operates on logic and pattern recognition, but history is built on emotion, myth, and context. When an algorithm reconstructs a pharaoh's face or predicts that a civilization fell because of drought, are we seeing the truth or just one version of it, filtered through data? There's also the danger of over-reliance. As AI becomes more accurate at identifying remains or reconstructing environments, archaeologists must balance efficiency with integrity. The terrifying precision of artificial intelligence forces us to confront uncomfortable truths, not just about ancient empires, but about ourselves. It reveals how easily narratives can be shaped by information, how the line between discovery and distortion can blur when the interpreter is not human. Still, AI has opened doors no human hand could. It bridges time, reviving voices silenced for millennia and making sense of fragments once deemed meaningless. In decoding Hatshepsut's story, AI didn't just illuminate her death, it redefined how we connect with the dead. The queen, who once ruled Egypt with unmatched vision, has now become the face of a new revolution where technology itself unearths the past and challenges what it means to remember. As AI learns to read the DNA of the dead, we must ask, what other buried truths are waiting to rise from history's tombs, and are we ready to face them? Share your thoughts in the comments below.